Alrighty, guys, welcome back. Today we have Finn Creighton on the show. He's someone that moved from the UK to Australia and he's stacking sats relentlessly. And so I'm looking forward to speaking to you, man, and hearing a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me on. Good to connect with another Gen Z and in Australia as well. We'll have to try and get an in-person meetup at some point.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think as my stack sort of grows bigger and bigger as time goes on and purchasing power goes up, I want to make those efforts to fly around Australia and meet some of the people in Australia stacking sats because they've all got an interesting story and I like having someone that actually relates to my journey. So that sounds like a good idea. Um, Firstly, to start off the show, I want you to share briefly sort of the stepping stones of your life and journey that not only shaped the man you've become today, but also what led you to Bitcoin.
Good question. I wanted to play professional rugby. That was all I wanted to do. And I never really got on with school. I was, you could say, smart enough to be able to get by through school without really applying myself too much. But it just never really interested me. I just wanted to be playing PE or sport or whatever. And as time went on through school, when university started coming into the picture and stuff, rugby was really my excuse to put off going to university and getting a degree. And although that was my dream and I wanted to play professional rugby, reflecting on it now, it definitely was my way of avoiding that traditional route of get a degree, get a good job, buy a house, work for 50 years paying it off, and retire. That never resonated, but I never knew the solution. I just knew I didn't want to do that. So then I kept chasing the rugby dream. I didn't get a professional contract at 18 out of school. I remember that felt like my world was over, but I joined my local rugby club that is basically where I would have ended up being loaned out to anyway. Played there for 2 years, basically just getting paid a match fee. I did like 10 hours a week in a coffee shop and then had no money to my name, but I thought I was saving towards a deposit, but not very successfully. And then COVID hit. I turned into an avid gamer, which I'd never played PlayStation really growing up, and then suddenly I had nothing to do. And that was really my wake-up call that I didn't really want the rugby dream as much as I thought, because if I did, I'd be out training every day, and actually I was just playing PlayStation for 15 hours a day. And then that's where I started thinking like, oh, I actually need to maybe get my life together. I'd had a place at uni that I'd deferred for 2 years whilst I was playing rugby. And then I took that up, went to uni for 3 months. I made it to Christmas. And whilst I was there, I was doing nothing. I was playing PlayStation still because it was still lockdown, COVID. I think I did 2 lectures and 3 gym sessions in a whole term at uni because everything was shut down. And then I was having these thoughts of this isn't for me, but I was just going to keep pushing through because my grandparents wanted me to go to uni and get a degree. And then sadly, I got back for Christmas and found the news that my mentor had committed suicide over the Christmas holidays during COVID. So that rocked me. That threw me off. He was a big mentor and man in my life. And in that moment, I left uni because I had the realization of why are you doing something that you don't want to do? Like life's short and life's precious. So that was number one. Then I had to get a real job. So I did 2 different recruitment jobs. They were horrific. Like I lasted a month. I've never been depressed, but that was the closest to depression I imagine I've ever been. And then got a job as a golf coach where you got a degree. So I thought, great, this is in sport. I'm going to get a degree, so I'll keep my family happy. And the same feelings at uni came back of like, this isn't it, but keep pushing through. And then I was playing rugby. I snapped my ACL, MCL, all of it blew my knee out, and that was another moment where it was like, why are you doing this stuff that you don't enjoy? Knee rehab was a mess, and then I came across a mentor saying online business. So my second operation, I had really good success after a year of terrible success on the rehab. So he inspired me to go and build an online knee rehab coaching business, and that took off really quickly. So the best thing I got from that, I would say, is learning skills about how to generate an income online so that I didn't have to do a job, because I think the job aspect was the bit I didn't enjoy, working for someone else, kind of not being in control. And it was through that mentor and his community where I found Bitcoin and ultimately found a better future.
I just think that's a really crazy thing to go through at that age, because sort of I was listening to that on Sean Clark's podcast, and he was sort of, I think he was sort of touched by it too, because to go through that at that age is a really difficult thing. And I think a lot of people that have their own mentors sort of expect them to be around for a longer time, especially when they're the people that seem so strong and they're the people that sort of feel like they've got it together. And then this thing comes through COVID where you see a lot of people struggling with mental health. And it's a really this wave of, I guess, hopelessness and a shock to the system. And so, what could you maybe share the importance of finding a mentor and having mentors throughout your journey, and sort of having them be like-minded on a similar path, or maybe they've been on a path you've already been on, that can sort of pave the way for you, and sort of share your personal experiences with those mentors growing up?
Yeah, I've had loads of mentors, and I'm really lucky to have come across the people that I have. But it was only in lockdown when that happened that I even realized that he was a mentor. I'd never really thought about mentors that way before, but that made me reflect, and as a result, see the power of mentors. And I guess when it really clicked was I went through that patch of him committing suicide and then getting injured, and my life felt really weird and wobbly. And it was only then, when reflecting, that I realized I didn't have this mentor in my life now, kind of holding my hand and giving me guidance where I needed it. So from that point, I made sure that I get a mentor. And what I go by and what I recommend others to follow is, if you're struggling in an area of your life, whether it's finances, health, relationships, whatever it is, find a person that's living the way that you want to in that area of life. So not that they're saying it. You see loads of people on social media living it up big time. And even for the finances, like if someone's driving a Lamborghini, you have to really think, do I actually want that life? Or are they just good at marketing? So find someone that lives the life in that area that you want, connect with them, whether it's actually paying to work with them, whether it's some kind of other value exchange. So I've got a mentor at the moment that I give my time and labor to in return for mentoring. And then do exactly what they say. Like, they know whether they're quite a few steps ahead or just a few steps ahead. Both of those relationships are equally as powerful, but then just do exactly what they say. And if you action their advice, you'll get there. Like, they've got the answers to what you want to achieve. And it's a cheat code and shortcut to getting to where you want to get to in those areas, because you can just follow a proven path.
Yeah, I've been trying to find other Bitcoiners that are like generally older than me, and also in Australia, because I feel like I'm just like this kid that's like discovered this thing, trying to tell everyone, it can change your life. And I don't have the big numbers to give them. Like, I can't be like, oh, I sold my house and I put it on Bitcoin. I put my whole retirement. It's like, I'm 21, I've got nothing. Like, I just put what I can. And so it's really hard to talk to older people. But then when you find an older person that's just as passionate about the same thing as you, but they've already sort of lived it out for a little bit. So I've met some people that have been in Bitcoin since 2017, 2018. They're a bit older than me here in Australia, and they're advocating for things like self-managed super funds. They're advocating to start allocating a significant part of their capital into Bitcoin here in Australia. And so I try and cling to those people a little bit more. Like I talked to Zane Truscott on my show, an Aussie Bitcoiner from Queensland, and suddenly he was, giving me personal calls and sort of chatting to me and trying to help me a little bit, because he understands that it's hard. Like when you're young, you see the vision for Bitcoin and things like that, and you start to really question a lot of things with how money is, and even your diet and health and things like that, where it all sort of ties into this fiat system. And so it's been really cool for me trying to find those people and trying to actually suss out those that are willing to give me that time, and sort of goes down those Signal group chats, Telegram group chats, of trying to find these communities we can be a part of. And it sounds like you're sort of building your own community, and I'm sure I can put a link to that in the description. But why do you believe Gen Z in particular, and the generations coming up, so the younger generation coming through, feel hopeless when it comes to a financially secure future?
Great question again. I'll just touch briefly on the community, because I think it's really important for our generation to have that support network. And similar to your experience, I've connected with other Bitcoiners that are older in the space. And when they see a young guy that's driven and gets it, they're more than happy to help. I had a great conversation the other day with Mr. M, giving some great advice, more around the YouTube content stuff than anything. But it gets lonely when you're young and you get it, but everyone thinks that you're crazy. A, it gets lonely, but B, if you are someone just getting into the space and you're not fully orange pilled yet, and you're having these conversations and people shutting you down, telling you you're crazy, you're probably not going to get fully orange pilled, and you're going to go to some other route. So the reason behind starting the community and having a space for people to just hang out more than anything is any questions. So making sure that you're self-custodying your Bitcoin securely, that's all sorted, but more so for the actual community piece, where it's a safe space for our generation to hang out, ask any questions, catch up, and get orange pilled and keep that conviction going, because it is easy as a younger person that conviction can drift. Like we said off the show, if you're planning for 20, 30 years in the future for your family's future, but your mates are out going clubbing every weekend or trying to catch the next crypto pump, which unfortunately probably won't happen, it is easy to get caught up in that noise. So being surrounded by signal rather than noise helps that conviction. And that's really the goal, is to create a space for those that are on the edge to meet people that are already all in, so that their conviction can build and they feel safe and ultimately don't miss out on a once in a species opportunity. Remind me of your actual question. I just went on a rant.
Why do you believe Gen Z and the generations coming up feel hopeless when it comes to financially secure future?
Yeah, I can only speak for myself here, really, and a few others that I've spoken to. But for me, I was taught from a young age that the way to be successful in life is to get your foot on the property ladder as soon as possible and go from there. So what does that mean for our generation if we're going to follow that path? That means saving as much fiat as possible to put down for a deposit, to then, if you do manage to get a deposit, get a massive mortgage, which means you're then tied to paying mortgage payments every month, where you're paying almost double the house price because of interest. And in my opinion, we're getting to a point now where house prices potentially can't keep going up at the rate they have been without a 2008 style correction. So maybe this doesn't answer why they're hopeless, because people still think that's the way to do it, but they will feel hopeless if they've just spent 5, 10, 15 years saving for a deposit. They finally get their house, and then their house loses half of its value because it's overvalued and the market realizes that. So that doesn't answer your question. To answer your question, I was saving for a deposit, and it felt like I wasn't getting anywhere because my savings were hardly increasing every month, every year, and house prices were increasing every month and every year. So that meant I felt like I was on this treadmill. And the first time that it really hit me was when I started looking into mortgages, and it's like I was trying to work out how much I actually need because I felt like I was near to having enough for a deposit if I got one of the small ones. And then I was like, this isn't what I was told it was going to be. I'm then trapped to have to work a job. If I lose my job, how am I going to pay this mortgage? And as you and I both know, the fiat current financial system is set up to benefit those that have assets, but our generation don't have assets. So we are already behind everyone else, and with the rate that money's getting printed and assets are getting inflated in price, it's just harder and harder for our generation to even get in the game with property or anything like this. And that's ultimately why I think Bitcoin is so amazing for our generation, because you can start with $1. You don't need a 10% deposit for a house down. You can literally get started today instead of buying a coffee, and hopefully get in the game, understand Bitcoin a bit better. And then as your conviction grows, start being in a position where maybe in the future, instead of just being able to buy one house and being stuck for your whole rest of your life, you can buy 10, 50 houses, and not that you'll want to, but have the ability to, and see a future with hope rather than feeling hopeless.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, I think a lot of young people now in their 20s just assume get the house as soon as possible and then just go from there. And it's like, I just don't think that should be what people aim for anymore, because Bitcoin comes in as an alternative. And when you hear numbers like it's done 59% on average for the last 7 years. I don't think real estate or any other asset can keep up with that rate of, I guess, almost like a progression as a teenage asset. And so even if that number starts to decrease over time, and maybe that averages out to say 30% over time, 20% over the time, just putting that deposit, potentially, not financial advice, but let's just say hypothetically, you put that deposit in Bitcoin instead, hold it for 4 years, I feel like you're going to have a lot more capital to play with and put a larger percentage of the mortgage down payment on than trying to do it in fiat terms, because these prices are running up. The house prices are running up at a rate where you can really feel the pressure to get in before it's too late. You feel the pressure that it's like, oh, I need to get a house because they're going up so fast that by the time, it's just all these numbers that you start running in your head. But why do you think Bitcoin plays a role in your questioning of houses? Like, so you're looking into mortgages, thinking maybe I should get one. How does Bitcoin reshape that idea that, hey, maybe temporary renting's not that bad? Hey, maybe moving back with the parents is not too bad for some people. Hey, like, these are new ideas, because a lot of people go, nah, you should not move back with your parents. Once you hit your 20s, get out as soon as possible. Go pay the $600 a week of rent. Go buy a house. Just, really good to be independent. And I feel like now that's being shaped as like a scam, because it actually sets a lot of people back. A lot of people that just rush into buying a house as soon as possible and not thinking about, I guess, the responsibility of the next 30 to 40 years, essentially being a debt slave. So just out of your personal experience, how's Bitcoin reshaped that idea?
Yeah, and I think it's important to be transparent that I wasn't thinking that clearly and completely understanding of it when I first heard of Bitcoin. I actually first thought of Bitcoin as a way to speed up my saving to then hit that deposit or boost my deposit so then I could buy a house quicker. It was only then when I started understanding Bitcoin and really diving down the rabbit hole more that I understood opportunity cost and why mortgages are that make you a debt slave, like you just said. But that wasn't from the beginning. I did just see Bitcoin as a quick trade to get a deposit or get a bigger deposit to start with. A house, in my opinion, shouldn't be something that you use to generate wealth. A house is something to live in, to have a roof over your head. And when you start running the numbers of opportunity cost, let's say you've got 50 grand saved for a deposit, and you can either put that into a deposit and then pay your mortgage, which is effectively the same price as what your rent would be, maybe a tiny bit less depending on where you are, or you buy Bitcoin with that deposit and then just pay rent. So the two options each month, you're either paying X amount for a mortgage that's paying off your mortgage, or you're paying the same amount roughly in rent. But if you've got your 50 grand in Bitcoin and then your 50 grand locked up in a house, I won't say it because I want people to go and actually look, but if you go and look at what each number is going to be, Bitcoin in 4, 8, 12, 16 years versus that value of the house, even if it continues at the current rate that it is, which is, I think, 8 to 12% a year, that, when I saw those numbers, for me, really made me reassess. And that's where I start questioning of, hang on, why is it pushed so much that you need to buy a house as quickly as possible? Don't get me wrong, I think owning a house gives that level of, or that feeling of security and comfort. And if you're going to have a family, you own the place you live in. Like Maurizio, when I had him on the podcast the other day, said, try not paying tax on your house, even if you fully paid off your mortgage. Is it actually your house? All these questions start coming up when you really look into it and start thinking about it. And the more that I did that, because Bitcoin encouraged me to look into which option is best, that's ultimately led me to a place now where I'd much rather save in Bitcoin, pay rent, and in the future be able to buy a house if I want to. But the other thing is, you can already see options coming out. I just saw one in Oz the other day. I can't remember what it was called, but being able to use that Bitcoin without selling it to buy a house or to own a house. And that's how I see my future going, is still holding on to the Bitcoin and being able to have a house, rather than having a house and having to have a job or whatever to pay the mortgage for the next 40 years.
Yeah, Bitcoin's really opened my eyes to like some potential strategies you can do long term. Because like initially, I just thought grow the stack and then take off a little bit at the top when you need it. But then there's all these taxes and things you have to pay, like a capital gains tax, because even though Australia doesn't want to recognize it as a very, very serious asset, a very serious commodity, they do want a piece of the pie regardless. And so this whole idea of putting your Bitcoin up as collateral and borrowing against it, so you can just do Bitcoin backed loans now. I think there's some products in Australia you can do that, and you can get interest rates as low as 10%. And so you could essentially keep your Bitcoin, put up a little bit as collateral, and borrow up to 50% of that collateral. And so if you're willing to pay that off in fiat terms over a longer period of time, assuming that Bitcoin's going to outperform the interest rate, it's an interesting idea that I had never thought about when I first got into Bitcoin. And now a lot of people are saying, hey, I borrow the dollars that are going down in value, but I'm holding the dollars, Bitcoin, that's actually going up in value. And so it sort of cancels it out. And even though I'm living in some percentage of debt, it's like I'm living in debt in an imaginary system. But over time, I'm growing this asset that's got a finite supply, a cap supply, something that's going to go up over time. And yeah, even these Bitcoin backed mortgages that I'm seeing a bit more in the US and things like that. But I think this will come to Australia, where it's like, hey, you can go get a $600,000 or $700,000 mortgage, just chuck up this amount of Bitcoin just as our collateral in our trust, and I'll give you a decent mortgage rate. It's like, like I'm sort of telling my wife now, going, hey, we might never actually need to sell this Bitcoin. We actually might be able to use it as a financial product in some, while the fiat system still exists and Bitcoin exists and they're trying to coexist. I don't think they can last long term. Like Jeff Booth says, one has to collapse. But I think while there's that arbitrage, I think it's a good opportunity to maybe take advantage of that system. And so I don't think I'll be selling my Bitcoin anytime soon, causing a taxable event. I think I'll be using it to my advantage and sort of, reaping the benefits of something that's going up 59% a year. And so, And it is very interesting, making that arbitrage between a crappy dollar and a superior money. But I wanted you to go a little bit more into this inflationary housing bubble, because a lot of people are assuming that this rat race of houses and things that just constantly go up forever will just be, houses, the median house price won't be at 1 million. It'll eventually be 1.1 million, 1.5 million, 2 million, and will just go up forever. But I'm getting the sense that this bubble eventually has to burst and things will fall to their true value. I'm not really sure what that looks like, but do you sort of have an idea? Do you think Bitcoin comes in, replaces that system? Or do you think things just dramatically fall and there's a 2008 sort of repeat? If you just were to predict it, what do you think could happen? Are they going to reset it, make a CBDC, bring in digital IDs? That's something that I'm seeing across the UK. But yeah, where do you sort of see this sort of playing out in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I like to not make many predictions when I think about this stuff and just stack Bitcoin, because that makes life much easier and much more positive when you can look at the bright side of things rather than all of the carnage going on around us. With the property inflation, maybe it will just keep going up with inflation, but maybe it won't. And without knowing that for sure right now, with how everything looks, I would not want to be buying a house at this moment in time, because the way that I see it is a house is going up in price, but if you actually think about it, it's going down in value unless someone's renovating it. Because if you, let's say the house you're in now, you bought last year and have done nothing to it, it's actually got worse because it will have cracks, it will have damage. So why is the price of the house going up? Obviously, we know that's inflation, but these prices don't reflect the actual fair value of what the house actually is, because otherwise houses should be going down in price like they do if you price them in Bitcoin. So that's another thing that's changed my perspective, is when you start measuring house prices or everything in Bitcoin versus in dollars, everything's getting cheaper. So then, for me anyway, when I realized that house prices are actually going through a recession if you measure them in Bitcoin, I was like, well, I'm going to hold off, because they're going up and up in price in fiat, and whether they just keep going or whether I think there's a good chance they're going to correct, because Gen Z can't get houses en masse. So the way I see it is it's going to get to a point where Gen Z end up just losing their mind and rioting and causing chaos because they've got nowhere to live, or they can't afford to keep up with how everything's going. So there's going to have to be some kind of correction or financial collapse or whatever. So like I said, I don't really like I don't like making predictions, but I do like weighing up and working out different scenarios. And the conclusion that I've come to for the time being is just stack sats and rent. And the other thing with renting, I understand people want to feel like they've got a secure base or whatever, but with renting, you can just up and leave. You can go wherever. And yeah, there's lots of pros to renting. And there's also lots of cons to owning a house that people don't see. And then lastly, to touch on your point, I know that you and your partner have moved into your own place. Me and my partner obviously live in our own place now, but when I first understood Bitcoin, I moved in to live with her parents, who I always say I'm extraordinarily grateful for, because we were paying cheap rent, cheap food. They were great to be around, and it meant I could stack way more sats than if I was paying rent. So I'm in a completely different situation now than if I'd spent the last 3-4 years living in my own place or living with mates. I was living with mates before, and then decided to move in with my partner and her parents, because instead of paying £700, which is 1,500 Aussie dollars a month, I could pay £150, which is $300 a month, and stack sats. So yeah, but it's sacrifices. Everyone will say in the future, "Oh, you got so lucky," but when I was living at home with my partner's parents, like, yes, they're amazing people, but at the same time, you don't have your own space. You always feel like you're treading on someone's toes. It's not uncomfortable, but you can't fully be yourself around there. You're not going to walk around the kitchen in your boxers like you would if you owned or rented the place yourself. So there's sacrifices that come with it, but for me, the asymmetric upside of the sacrifice was well worth it.
It's crazy what Bitcoin does to you, because like I would never have even thought about once me and my partner moved out, I would never have thought to go, let's move back with our parents for financial gain. I would have gone, nah, it's worth the independency. It's worth this. It's worth that. But we constantly have conversations go, we could save an extra $7,000 by Christmas if we moved back with our parents. They've had all their kids, all her brothers and sisters have moved out. We could move back there. We could move back with my parents, because everyone's getting to that age where all the kids are in their 20s now, moving on. And so these big houses that both our parents have are just empty. And so we constantly talk about it just as an idea, and just to save that extra, I guess we're saving in Bitcoin. So save that extra Bitcoin, because I think looking back on it, I think we'll be right where we go, thank goodness I sacrificed that thing. And at the time, people thought I was crazy. At the time, people thought, that's a bit ridiculous. It's only an extra $350 a week or whatever to be independent or whatever. And so Bitcoin really does change your saving habits, that I've noticed, and you really start thinking about the future. You think about every Satoshi counts. And even for me, like I sold not a nice car, but I sold my car a few months ago, literally to stack more sats. And I said, hey dad, because I work for my dad, can I take a work car home? And just to help me stack some sats, because he's stacking sats as well. So he understands. And a lot of people just think that's crazy. They're like, you had this cars, you went camping with it, forward driving, and a nice Hilux. What are you doing, mate? And so I just said, dude, in the future, I'll know that was whatever point Bitcoin, and it was worth it. And so even now, like I'm saving on fuel. I use the business card for fuel. I use don't have to pay insurance, don't have to pay rego, and just don't have to pay general maintenance costs for the car. And so these are crazy things now in 2025 and 2024 and the years before. But I think in the future, people would go, damn, like he traded, a crappy old beat up Hilux that he'd already sort of flogged and swapped it for Bitcoin. It's like, that was a good move. When Bitcoin's 1 million or 10 million or whatever it goes to, it's like, yeah, that's going to be a good move in the future. So it is hard now with the sacrifices, but I think young people need to consider these things, because in the future, you're going to wish that you did certain things. And I think it would be nice to get to the future without all those regrets. I sort of wanted to pivot topics and sort of talk about how Bitcoin can allow people to work for their passion rather than just for the paycheck. So the way I sort of see this is, you can save in Bitcoin, and it allows you to maybe have a little more financial security in some sense, because your purchasing power is going up over time, to maybe pursue something you actually want to do. Is that something that you can maybe relate to, or go into how young people can do that today?
Yeah, man, for sure. So I think that's 100% true. As an example, the last 2 years when I was doing the online business, I had months that weren't great, where cash flow was low. And again, luckily I was living with my partner's parents, so the stress wasn't as high. But if that had happened 2 years, 3 years, 4 years prior, where I had nothing behind me, I'd be stressed, and I'd be in a position where, instead of pursuing at the time what I wanted to do, which was my business and working on that, there was months where I 100% would have gone and got a job, because I would have felt like I was behind and that I needed the money. Whereas what Bitcoin allowed for me was to know that I had this buffer, and it was a bit of a weird feeling, and I still get it sometimes, of like this pre-rich phase where you're not fabulously wealthy yet, but like you can do the math and it's looking good. But that can sometimes put you in a bit of a weird spot where you could be slightly less motivated or whatever for a bit of a lull in time. But what it does do is it lifts a massive weight off your shoulders, where for me now, and again, to be transparent, like I stacked sats like an absolute nutter for 3 years, and I still am, but for 3 years. And the weight it lifts off your shoulders, where even though right now it's not like a huge amount of money, knowing that your family's future is going to be sorted and protected allows me to now enjoy my time more while still being mindful that I want to stack as much sats as possible and work on things that I want to do and that I'm passionate about. So as an example, and like I said to you off stream, like maybe it was a dumb idea of packing up the online coaching business because it was cash flowing, but I stopped enjoying it. I stopped waking up every morning and wanting to do it. And again, maybe that was my lack of skills at the time of building a team, because I could have just scaled myself out rather than doing everything myself. But it allowed me to pivot, and ultimately now my main focus is helping or producing Bitcoin education primarily at Gen Z. I've got a few different things that I'm doing for cash flow, but I'm not stressed that I need to go and get a job or whatever, which for me was, like I said at the start, ever since day dot, working a job, working for someone else never really appealed to me. And Bitcoin has been that freedom tool that, because I understood it and then relentlessly stacked, has now helped me get to a position where I can actually pursue a passion as opposed to basically being a slave and having to work a job to pay my bills or whatever, if that makes sense. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. Just gives you the confidence to actually step away from the constant money chase and actually find something you enjoy. Yeah, I think I'm at a step maybe before you where it's like I'm still pretty fresh to Bitcoin in some sense, and I haven't got to a stack where I'm comfortable with letting go a little bit of that chasing the dollar, because I'm just trying to stack as much as I can. So I think I'm in that accumulation phase. But I think without Bitcoin, I don't really know what my goals would be for the next 10 years. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot, because I left school early while I was still in the crypto world before Bitcoin, and just went and worked for my dad. He offered me a full-time job straight away. It was, average money, but I thought, hey, there's a lot of guys that are doing apprenticeships for carpentry, being electrician, plumbers, and they were on $15, $16 an hour or whatever in their first year. And I was sort of, $25. And so not that that's a good income or anything, but it appealed to me as an 18-year-old. That was only 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And all my plan A was just to work for dad for the rest of my life. I was just like, I don't really have any passions, can't figure out what to do, don't want to do a trade, don't want to go to uni. I knew I didn't want to go to uni. I didn't want to have the HECS debt over my head, and I didn't find something that I was willing to give 4 years of my time to. And so it's been interesting, because I think, like, as I've discovered Bitcoin and things, and built my stack to a degree, but also gone, maybe chasing money isn't going to be my purpose for 40, 50 years. Maybe I don't actually have to work the 50-hour weeks for the rest of my life, or whatever it may be. Maybe I don't have to pick up the extra shift on a Saturday, which is what a lot of young people are doing now, just to try and get ahead. And so it gives me, I suppose right now I'm still in grind time. Like, I'm still working those weeks, and I'm still just working for dad, trying to work up the ladder in some sense, get to a management role. It's a pretty big business now. But in the back of my mind, I go, hey, I can chase something. If something comes up that I really want to chase, whether it's this YouTube thing, whether it's eventually coaching Gen Z one-on-one with Bitcoin, these are just some ideas that I'm having that I think I could potentially do. Bitcoin's really made me question those things and actually gone, hey, like, what do you want your next 10 years to actually look like? Do you want to look back and go, I've got regrets not chasing that dream or chasing that idea, or the idea to maybe work from home for one day or whatever? Yeah, it is interesting that it changes your perspective on the future, changes your outlook on life to actually go, hey, let's actually focus on what I want to do rather than just what gets the pay slip. And so what I've heard often is with that Bitcoin support and that idea, and it relieves the stress, you actually, with your passion and with what you chase, ends up outperforming the 9 to 5 anyway, because you're actually genuinely passionate about it. You've had the breathing space to give it 3 to 6 months without being profitable, and then it suddenly gets off its feet. And so, yeah, I think that's just inspiring, that whole idea to go, hey, when money ain't a problem, you can chase whatever you want to a degree. Um, but what I
Yeah,
found interesting,
I'll just jump in quick because whilst you're on topic, because I do think there are stages, and I'd still consider myself in the stage of hustle and stack sats like a madman, is how I like to explain it. But going to the fiat mine to mine fiat is actually a bit of a cheat code if you funnel it into Bitcoin. Not financial advice, but like you said, building a business. I spoke to a absolute legend that I met on the Gold Coast. I met him from a coffee the other day. He built his business and for the first 12 years didn't take a wage. So building a business isn't easy, and it's made to look easy with all the online gurus and stuff. And yes, you can make some decent money, but the percentage of people that are successful is low. So if you've got a job that you can do without being miserable, that pays you money that you can then convert into Bitcoin, that's a great place to be. And Bitcoin came into my life at a good time because it just made me go into madman mode, like stack sats mode, and just work. I was coaching rugby and building my business at the same time. Then when my business equaled my coaching, I went full-time coaching, and then I was working like 15-hour days to just move as quickly as possible, which if you flip it to like a job perspective is the same as getting 2 jobs and just working like a madman for a year or two. Um, like I genuinely believe if Gen Z make the sacrifices for a year, 2 years, get work as much as possible, move back in with your parents, for example, sell the car like you did. I did the same thing. I had this car that was way nicer than what I should have had at the time, and then when it clicked, I just sold it and put it all into Bitcoin. But if you make those sacrifices, and whether it's a business, whether it's a side hustle, whether it's 2 jobs, however you want to do it, just max out that income and cash flow. Obviously, there's more upside with a business or a side hustle because it could go, whereas a job, you're capped at a salary. But job, then be valuable, whether it's in your job for promotions or because you're creating a business. Make sure you're always adding value to yourself and go crazy for the next 1, 2, 3 years, because that's probably realistically the runway that we've got left to really go crazy and capitalize on the opportunity that we've got. But sorry for cutting in. I just thought I'd add that a job isn't necessarily a bad thing to be in for a year or two when you're going crazy.
yeah, I think I'll look back and be like very extremely thankful to my dad for giving me that job, because it really has led me to Bitcoin. I think every little stepping stone, and if I was distracted at uni or I was distracted at these other things, I don't think I would have maybe never even got to Bitcoin. But I think with the job that I have right now, I'm only working from 7 till 3 or 7 till 3:30 every day. It gives me time to get home, quick shower, and then I can do some YouTube things, or I can do whatever I need to do. And so it's been sort of a blessing because it's that whole job, because it's a laboring job and I can have Bluetooth headphones on the whole day. It's allowed me to binge like like thousands and thousands of hours of Bitcoin content, audiobooks. And that's what drove the passion. That's what orange pilled me. And so if I was in any other job where it required my attention the whole time, no Bluetooth headset, nothing to feed me information throughout the day, I would not be where I am now. And so it's going to be interesting zooming out in 5, 10 years, I think, for us, just as young people, because I believe a lot will happen in the next 5 to 10 years, not only with Bitcoin's price, but I think, the amount of purchasing power, not just in dollar terms, but people will want your Bitcoin so badly. So whether that is through the borrowing products, whether it's through, the Bitcoin backed mortgages or whatever, I think every bank, every business, every community will want Bitcoiners involved, people holding Bitcoin. And so it's going to be interesting because Michael Saylor says, this is really the beginning of the gold rush and we've got the next 10 years before it's sort of too late. And I do believe to an extent in 10 years, it could be quote unquote too late because that whole gold rush would have already gone. And so you'll have the leftover gold nuggets for people to try and get a hold of a bit of Bitcoin, but they'll be paying a lot more than they are today. And so, yeah, I think young people really need to take that second look and start considering it. What you're doing, you're buying, a little bit over 2,000 Satoshis a day, just out of principle, trying to tell people, hey, you don't need a whole Bitcoin. Just buy a little bit, set up a DCA and do it, maybe daily, maybe weekly, maybe even monthly. And that's something that I've told my older brother who had no interest in Bitcoin. I said, hey, can you set aside $30 a week and just do that for the next year and come back to me? And he's like, yeah, I'll see what I can do. And I'm like, come on, mate, you can do this. Like, it's just $30. If you can't find $30, and I know, if you buy lunch or whatever, just cut out that bit and do it because it will get him interested. He will actually have a bit of skin in the game. And then his conviction, his orange pill, everything, it will go from there. That's just my idea and my planning. And so set up a DCA for people that are just not interested right now, try and help them start. And then I think their own conviction will have to go from there. And ultimately, it's going to be their choice at the end of the day. Something that I heard you say I think it might have been one of your own personal videos, but you sort of said one of your goals is to eventually have your partner at home with kids and not to have to feel like she has to be out in the workplace, and maybe she hands off her kids to, maybe it's a babysitter, a nanny, childcare, daycare, whatever it is. This is something that I have my own goal. This is something that my wife is wanting to do, be like a trad wife, people call it now, because it's like unheard of. And I think the only reason it's unheard of is because there's so much financial pressure to have both partners working forever. I don't think that's how it's designed to be or meant to be. And so I find that really interesting. So how does Bitcoin shape, how does it give you the ability to maybe do that in the future when kids do come along?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. I've always wanted that growing up, and an ex-partner of mine was very the opposite. She was very career focused, wanted to go to uni, A-star student, and something never really sat well with me about that. Like, I respected the drive, but I always wanted my partner to be someone that was very family orientated, wanted kids, like that was high up on their priorities. And when I met my partner now, like she said, when she was growing up and people asked her what she wants to be when she's older, she was like, I want to be a mum. You don't hear that very often anymore when you speak to a female for their main goal to be, I want to be a mum. It's now, I want to be this job, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. They can do whatever they are passionate about. But for me, I wanted a partner with those motherly instincts, and I wanted to be able to provide so that she could focus on being a mother. A mentor, going back to mentors, got me to write a 10-year vision and what I wanted for the future. And I wrote my 10-year vision, and then he said, is this your partner's 10-year vision as well? And then he got me to get her to write her 10-year vision, and then we kind of merged one together. And for her, she still wants to be busy, and she's passionate about health. So for her, she wants to have kids, be a present mother, and that's her number one focus. But then also set up some kind of home gym where she has other mums around. They can have their kids running around like lunatics in a playpen, and she can help them get healthy. But to answer your question, if you look at Bitcoin's last 10 years and then extrapolate forward what the next 10, 20, 30 years are going to look like. Even if the trajectory goes to 20, 30% a year return rather than what it has been, you can start seeing a completely different future for yourself and your family than if, let's say, you saved up to buy that house, or you were just saving money, or you were just renting and working a job and blowing it all, going out every weekend like I used to. So for me, Bitcoin has provided that hope that it's possible. And I guess summarizing everything we've really talked about, but delaying the gratification, where now my vision that I've always grown up with, I've met someone with the same vision that wants to grow up and have a family. That's the main value, where as much time and being present with them as possible, rather than having a family but both being off at work and not really being present and good parents with them. And that's not to say busy parents aren't good parents, but giving as much as possible through time is what ultimately I want to do. And Bitcoin has allowed me to see that vision come to life in the future, because those sacrifices for the last 3 years, and I'm sure will continue for the next few years, to stack as many sats as possible, make then the rest of your life so much better. And we're 20, and right now I'm 26 now, birthday last week, but in our 20s, it feels as though 3 years of sacrifice, you're giving up so much time, blah, blah, blah. But it realistically, from 20 to 25 or 25 to 30, if you were saving or going that traditional route, you're not going to be much further off than if you just did nothing for 5 to 10 years. In reality, like, you might have some money for a deposit saved or whatever, but if you sacrifice those 5 years, and sacrifice, some people might think, I don't think it's a sacrifice really, and stack sats like crazy, then your family's future is sorted. For me, that is well worth the payoff of a few years of grinding, and a few years of not going out every weekend, and a few years of not having a nice car, and maybe a few years of living at home. But when you really understand what Bitcoin is and the power that we have right now to utilize Bitcoin for what it's meant to be, which is money and a savings invention, then you can have a much brighter outlook on the future.
It's kind of crazy. Like, Bitcoin allows you to actually think about things that were once a reality that are no longer reality, like having your partner at home and all these ideas that are now so unheard of, and going back to sort of traditional ideas. And I think the only reason we've gone away from that is the fiat system, and they print so much money that they make everyone's life just constantly chasing the dollars, the very dollars that they're printing. And so, my dream would to be, have a big enough property one day. So I do sort of think one day I do want to buy a house and settle down to a degree and have a home base, but I want that to be only a percentage of my Bitcoin, like a very small percentage. I don't want to have to trade all my Bitcoin for it. And so the idea is that Bitcoin runs up so much to a degree that I can shave off, even if, say, it is 10% or 20% to buy a nice property. I'm happy with that. You know what I mean? I don't need all my Bitcoin forever, because what's the point of having Bitcoin if you hold it forever? And so it's changed my perspective on wealth to a degree. Like, when I was growing up in the teenage years, which I guess is not long ago, the idea is like Lamborghinis and like all these cool things. And so now for me, that's completely changed. I've got this long-term vision. I just want to save as much as I can in Bitcoin, put the sacrifices off now, which everyone goes, these are your prime years, spend, go out, have the drinks, buy this, buy that, buy the cool clothes, like blend in with the crowd when it comes to being 21. And I'm just like, that just does not interest me. Like, I'm thinking, I want to enjoy my 30s. I want to enjoy my 40s. Like, how can I prepare for that to a degree while still enjoying my 20s? And so, me and my wife still want to do like a Europe trip next year. And so I'm navigating, what does that look like? Do I keep buying Bitcoin, assuming it's up by the time I want to leave? Do I keep some fiat? Do I end up putting Bitcoin up as collateral and borrow against it? Like, I don't know. I haven't figured the logistics of it, but I still want to live to a degree now. But it really changes what you see wealth being. Like, wealth for me now is have a decent property eventually, with all the kids running around having fun, whatever, kicking the footy and mucking around, and having the mum actually at home, being able to, look after the kids, spend time with the kids, not have to handball the kids to someone else. And so, and that's even with saying, like, she for work right now, she's doing two jobs. So she's working at childcare, but now she's picked up being a Pilates instructor. So Pilates is trending at the moment. And so now she's a Pilates instructor. And so, yeah, she sort of has a similar thing to your partner with this idea of fitness and helping other people. And I dream of one day, maybe this is just me saying it so I can look back at it and go, did he accomplish his dreams? But yeah, have a nice property where she has a little Pilates studio. And that's something we've talked about, building a Pilates studio one day. And I think the only chance of getting those dreams to me is having Bitcoin growing on the side, storing my time and energy in something that's going to go up over time, be worth a lot more than it is now in the future. Swapping my time and energy at work into something that's almost like a better battery. If Bitcoin's a battery, it's the best battery. It doesn't just bleed dry like other batteries. And so I just see Bitcoin, it's nothing more to me than just this savings technology, money with a fixed supply, something that allows me to plan my future around it, assuming its purchasing power continues to grow. And it can really create the future that you desire to a degree, just by saving in a better currency, just by saving in something with a finite supply. Um, yeah, I just think the whole idea of it's really cool, and I sort of ponder on those dreams where Bitcoin is often involved, because it is this key foundation when it comes to trying to build for a financial future, especially when you're in a relationship with someone, especially when you're planning on having kids. And so it goes a lot deeper than what people think. A lot of people just think it's a short trade, make your money and dip, and it's like, dude, no, this could really change your future. This should really change your route.
Yeah, it's much more. But again, I came into Bitcoin thinking it was just a short trade, and then that's why I agree with what Robin said on a podcast the other day. The best way to get involved, or where to start, is just to buy some, because then you're in the game and you start learning straight away. But the world and the financial system is not in a good direction when people laugh at you for your vision being what traditional families used to have. Something is not right when people are laughing at you because they think you're crazy for thinking that you can provide and your wife and mum of your kids not work. We're in a spot now which I think most Gen Z are too busy and they're just walking blindly into the future because they've lost hope. So they're just living it up now. And to your point where you said about people telling you should live because it's your 20s, your 30s, the one thing that I always challenge you to do or challenge people on, is those people giving you that advice, are they living the life that you want? So let's say it's a 30, 40, 50-year-old giving you that advice. Are they living the life that you want when you're their age? Because if not, why would you listen to that advice? And for me, I would much rather sacrifice, again, I don't see it as a sacrifice, or my 20s or 20 to 25, to then have complete control of my 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and do stuff that aligns with my vision and values and provide genuine value to the world, rather than having to work a job or having to do certain things for a CBDC. Who knows? It's just paying attention and questioning what we think we know. That's what I encourage people to do. And anyone watching, if any of this resonates, is just start questioning everything that you think you know, because if everything that you think you know is right, you would already be living the life that you want to live.
Yeah, something's definitely wrong. I think people need to look into Bitcoin. Just one last little rabbit hole I wanted to go in just to hear your thoughts. But I think the fiat system has crawled into so many different areas and categories of society. I think it affects a lot of things that people wouldn't even think about. Like, for example, I've read this book called Fiat Food, and it had Saifedean Ammous sort of, he did like a whole bunch of chapters at the end of it, but I've forgotten the original author. But that whole book goes into how the fiat dollar, where they print so much money and there's always a motive to push something, really corrupted the whole food industry. So the quality of our food, because they're printing so many dollars, how can they hide inflation? Oh, let's just drop quality. So then this is when you start seeing seed oils come in. This is when you start seeing the cereals come in. It goes, oh, bacon and eggs, man, that's getting so expensive. How can we replace it? Here's just this sugary treat that will trick your brain into thinking it's good in the morning, gives you a bit of energy, but then you're on this plateau of a crash. And so is that something that you've gone down? To me, it seems like you're already dieting and sort of had this healthy, strict diet with your rugby. But do you think Bitcoin sort of changed your perspective on why they push certain products, how they hide inflation, and how Bitcoin could potentially return us to, say, steak and eggs for breakfast instead of cereal?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic, and it's actually been on my mind much more for the last year than it was when I first found Bitcoin. When I first found Bitcoin, it was strictly just the rabbit hole of the financial world and what's wrong with that. Then it shifted to kind of myself changing my paradigm for the future financially, and then it shifted towards, well, if my life's going to look good, then I want to do everything I can do now for myself and my health to optimize that. Now, like you said, I'd always been playing rugby, so I trained probably not enough to play professional rugby, but I'd always been training, active, eating healthy. You could argue not eating enough because I'm too skinny for a rugby player, but I was eating good food. But funnily enough, about a year ago, one of my mentors reached out to me about this network marketing, multi-level marketing company that they're called Zinzino, and I absolutely stand by their product. I did it for a bit, but I stepped away because I didn't really align with network marketing, because it's an amazing business model for those that can run with it and do well, and everything's there to do it with. But the amount of people that don't do well is huge. And I couldn't have the same conviction when speaking to someone about the opportunity when I suddenly saw pretty quickly how many people just do nothing with it. However, their their main product is called Balance Oil, which is an omega supplement, and they have a test that's independently done at a test lab in Oslo in Norway, and you're meant to be a 3-to-1 omega-3 to 6 ratio to be in balance. So your cells are healthy, you can absorb nutrients, you can release toxins. The average now, I can't remember, it's 12-to-1 or 20-to-1 in the US, 12-to-1 in Europe, which is like chronically inflamed, acne, internally inflamed, people getting ill all the time, autoimmune diseases, cancers, which, if you look at the stats, is all on the rise. So I stand by their product, but where Bitcoin came into this is I went to a talk with one of the doctors that's associated with the company, and he did a whole presentation on the history of chronic illness, food, funding of food, and when you see big pharma come into play and how they now cure treatments through popping pills and giving, instead of fixing the issue, they just mask the issue. So you just live with whatever you've got and mask the pain, or you mask the problem, rather than just fixing it with nutrition, which is what Zinzino is looking to do, is fix it with test-based nutrition rather than have painkillers and drugs to keep it going. Preventative health. That really opened my eyes to then see, like, oh yeah, our health as a society and as a world is on the decline, because it's not beneficial for everyone to be healthy to the people that control the money. They want to control the money. They want to control health, because the more people that are that fringe level of sickness, the more people, need to be on subscriptions, need pain meds. What does that mean? That means Big Pharma gets more money to provide for their goods and services. So if you then look, it gets a bit kind of suspicious when you look at where all the connections are within Big Pharma to then the big brands of Nestle, you name it, these cereals that when it first came out that breakfast was the most important meal of the day, that was a marketing stunt so that people wanted to buy cereals that were getting pushed at the time. So when you start, again, questioning everything and thinking, why is this getting pushed? Or why am I being told this is the important thing? And questioning what the motive behind these things actually are, you then start to realize that it doesn't all make too much sense. However, I'm ranting again. To get back to your question, yes, it's made me much more focused on my health. And that moment where it all clicked really helped, because I was guilty where when I first found Bitcoin and started stacking with urgency, I did neglect my health because I was just working as much as I could. But then as you go down the rabbit hole further, as you hear different people's perspectives, health came up. And then I was like, oh yeah, my life is now looking so much better in the future that I want to actually be healthy to enjoy that life. I don't want to just get there frail and old because I've worked so hard to get there. So for me, that is, I'm actually not eating too much meat at the moment because my partner's vegetarian. So I told her I'd give it a go when we moved to Australia. But the best I've ever felt was when I did 6 months pretty much carnivore, where I just ate eggs, steak and yogurt and honey 24/7, drank water, no alcohol. Yeah. And life's pretty good when you just keep it simple. Like, it doesn't need to be complex or complicated. You can just keep it simple. Eat meat, eat eggs, drink water, and stack sats. Life's good then.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin does simplify life a little bit. Go back to the basics. Before we finish up, what is some advice you could give to Gen Z today in relation to saving in Bitcoin, but also chasing dreams, passions, and self-sovereignty?
My answer's changed a bit in the last week since having a conversation with Robin. So I'll start with, first thing is go and buy some Bitcoin. Just figure it out. $5 worth to just buy some, because then you're in the game. You have to learn a very basic level to just know how to go and buy some. And then that should start you on your journey. For me, The Big Print by Larry Lepard was a simplified way of explaining the problem, because it's all well and good us going and shouting to Gen Z saying you need to buy Bitcoin, it will change your life, blah, blah, blah. But if people haven't hit a pain point of something or don't realize there's a problem going on, Bitcoin means nothing to them. So The Big Print by Larry Lepard is a great book to kind of open your eyes to the problem that we're in and probably make you want to act with some urgency. Sovereignty was something that was never too big for me, but again, Bitcoin massively accelerated my learning and realization of the power of sovereignty. But again, when you start doing your research, who's actually in control? Are you in control of that money in your bank that isn't your money and isn't in the bank? So is saving actually safe? Do you actually own it? Assets actually safe? Do you actually own them? Is a house actually safe? Do you actually own it? Bitcoin is the only thing you can truly own and borderless. And I moved to Australia. I brought a suitcase. I don't actually have my Bitcoin on me here. It's all over the spot. So have fun finding it, but you can take it with you, you can move. And ultimately, if you're semi-aware with what's going on in the world right now, who knows what it's going to look like in 6 months, let alone 5 years of where you want to live. So for me, sovereignty is flexibility and maneuverability and financial freedom, or at least some sort of financial control. And that's what Bitcoin really provides, because you're not tied to a location, you're not tied to anything. If you got shut out of your bank and you had no access to your money that isn't in the bank anyway, you've got a means to transact and exchange value for services or goods that you need to survive. And then the last thing, I don't know if you mentioned it, but community is massive. Being surrounded by like-minded people that have that vision for the future. Joey, like you've just said, you don't find many 20, 21, 22-year-olds anymore whose main vision is they want a happy, strong family. People aren't even thinking that way. So being surrounded by like-minded people in that position, but then also being open to people and welcoming to people that are just starting that journey, because putting your arm around people that are showing interest is rewarding for you to do it, for me to do it, but it's going to help them progress much faster and ultimately get that hope and improve their experience of life, which is a bright one if you make the right decisions. I think we are due for an amazing, abundant future if prepared efficiently. So join the Sovereign Kind community that Joey said he'll link. It's free. And ask any questions, because we're all going to be in that abundant future. We're not going to get left behind.
I think I might have to join that group, so you'll see me in there, guys.
Get in.
Yeah, this conversation's been awesome, man. I really, really appreciate you coming on. And just lastly, where can people find you, particularly on X, on YouTube? What's your handle so people can reach out to you?
Yeah, X and YouTube is exactly the same. So at Creighton, you probably want to put the links in the description because no one can spell my name, but FINCREIGHTON. It's the same for both. And then I'm not very active on Instagram, but again, it's the same there. So yeah, appreciate any follows or subscribes. Most of the content I'm putting up is around Bitcoin education and what's wrong with money education, speaking to big names in the space, but also speaking to everyday people like Joey and I, who are passionate and a few steps ahead rather than multi-millionaire billionaires like the ones you see, so you can relate to them and ultimately, hopefully, start making your first steps towards sovereignty and a brighter future.
Hell yeah, brother. Enjoyed it. See you later.
See you, man.